Okay, we're going to do a couple things here. We're going to follow through tutorial number 3, model versus view. We're going to introduce one new component, the canvas, but we're also going to introduce a way of looking at a graphical user interface app. And that way of looking at it is that the graphical user interface itself is a view for a model that sits in the background. So in the simplest kind of arrangement, the model might be a single object, and the view lets the user interact with the object. So just like going way back to assignment 2, where you had the chicken object, and the view was actually just a text conversation with the user, and then it called methods in the chicken object. Same idea here, same setup. We have this a class or a set of classes that comprise the model of whatever it is we're doing, whether it's a game or a productivity app or whatever. If it's Word, it's the document. It's holding the document and all the properties of the document. That's the model. If it's a game, then it's the game world and the current state of all the players in the game and so on. There's a very simple example here on the screen. This is what we're going to build. So it's already kind of pre-built for you. It's just called Circle Manager. And the model here is a circle object, just like the circle objects we've been looking at. And the view just does one simple thing. It lets you set the radius. And it's drawing the circle on a canvas that's part of the view here. So if I change this to 60, set radius. And you'll notice the circle knows how to draw itself. And it kind of sets its line width here proportional to how big it is. So the smaller it is, the smaller the line width. And the bigger it is, the bigger the line width. I can't really see that. Okay, so that's what we're going to build, is this app here. And like I said, it's already in there. A built version of it is already in there called Circle Manager. What we're going to need for this, so if we go to step 3A, so we're in tutorial 3, step A, it says create an app from the FX GUI template that looks something like this one, and it tells you what the components are. It tells you how to attach a canvas, and the button has an event handler attached to it. So we're going to do all of that stuff, and we're going to do it real quick, so we're not going to worry too much about making it look exactly right. But first I'm going to do two things. I'm going to take circle 4. This is our model class. So if you take a look at what's in this model, it's a circle like any other that we've seen before. It's got a radius and an X and a Y location, and it's got a bunch of stuff we're not going to use, like get area and equals. This is the thing we're going to use here, the draw method. And you can see it draws itself centered. So the X and Y define the center coordinate of the circle. And there's a get radius and a set radius, which are going to be important. We're going to use the set radius. And you can see here there's a label here that's actually displaying the toString, which is right here. So it's displaying what's in the toString. Okay, so the circle object we don't have to write. It's already created. I'm just going to copy it and put it into the source folder here. That's going to be okay. And then we're going to take the GUI template here out, and we're going to copy that into the source folder, and I'll call this circle view. How about circle view? Okay, so I've got my two classes here, circle view and circle 4, sitting right here. I'm going to be working on circle view, so I'll get rid of this. We're not going to probably need this. And let's get going. So you might want to stop at this point and just see if you can create this template yourself. A canvas is a component like any other, like this. You just create it like that. You specify its width and height, and then you can plunk it down. So we're going to create GUI components. We need a text field, radius field equals new text field, and let's give it a default of I don't know, 100, like that. And then we need to create a button. Button, set button equals new button. Change radius. I'm just going to try and make it a little bit different than the example. There's a label at the bottom there. It's a toString label. Equals new label with nothing in it. Actually, there is another constructor that's just an empty constructor, so we can do it that way. And finally, we need a canvas. We'll just call it C equals new canvas. Let's make it 200 by 200, like that. Okay. Oh, we should change this to be circle view, and we need to get all these imports going. So we need the text field, Alt Enter, import class. We need the button, Alt Enter, import class. We need the label. Make sure you get the Java FX versions of all of these. Same for Canvas too. Ooh, notice it gave me AWT first. I want the Java FX version of it. So there we go. I'm creating all my canvases. All my components. I can run and I won't see anything in circle view right now. Now I can put them down on the table, if you will. So let's go root.getChildren .add all, like that. So if you need to look this stuff up, it's in the the last few things that we did. So this is back from the first tutorial. ToString label and C. So we're sticking them all down on the page, on the root pane. Now what are we going to need here? Just like before, we're going to need to, as instance variables, there are certain things we're going to have to be able to access. So the radius field, we're going to need to be able to get that in our event handler in order to read what's been written in it. The button we're not going to need, the label we're going to need, and the canvas. Actually, we don't need the canvas. What we need is the graphics context. Graphics context GC equals C dot get graphics context 2D. So that's right there. You might recognize these lines from the GUI template. From the FX graphics template and the FX animation template. We are going to need to draw on the graphics context, so that is going to have to be an instance variable as well. So I think those are our three instance variables, and we get rid of the declarations here. There we go. I think that's good. Okay, so this will set up our components, and it's just going to stick them all down one on top of the other. So you can see the button and the text field, the label's back there too. What we could do is we could actually draw something, fill rect 00 200 200. Just draw something on the canvas. Otherwise, it's just kind of transparent and you can't see it. But if we do this, if we immediately draw on the graphics context, we should see a big black rectangle. It's actually, you can see that the canvas is actually on top of the other components. You know what? Let's put the components beside this. I like that idea, but maybe we should give it a better color first. gc.setFill color.web. Actually, color dot. Not blue. How about light goldenrod yellow? There we go. So we'll give it a different look and feel here. There we go. Lovely. Okay, so I'm going to put these components. I need to configure it a little bit. We're still on step A here. This is all the stuff that we went through in the other tutorial. But I'm just going to move things over. I'm not going to worry too much about making them look good. Radius field dot relocate to move it, and we can move it to, could be X location 0. No, could be Y location 0. But the X location, the canvas is 200 wide, so let's go 210, maybe 10 for Y, like that. And we also need to move over the button. So the set button needs to be relocated to X of 210 and maybe a Y of 60. I don't know. And the toString label also needs to be relocated. I think I'll leave that an X of 0 and just move it down underneath the canvas. So I think maybe 202 should do it. And maybe we should put something on the label so that we can see it. All right, let's take a look. All right, so my label's down there. Doesn't look beautiful. Anyways, it's not a beautiful display by any means, but we can see all the components and they're all there. So that's good enough. All right, let's move on to step 3B. All right, in the instance variables section, declare a variable to hold the model. Okay, so remember, the point of this is going to be that the graphical user interface is the view that lets us see and interact with what's behind the scenes, which is the model. Okay, so the model is typically going to be at minimum one class, but probably in most apps it's going to be a collection of classes. So we're just going to use the Circle4 class. Let's call it model. So this is our model. And right here, it suggests that you create the model here. So new Circle4, and it needs a radius and an X and a Y. I put that the radius, default radius was 100 here, so let's give it a radius of 100. And actually the canvas is 200 by 200, so if I want it to be in the middle, because it draws itself centered, we can do that. So that creates the model. Actually, that was step 3B and C. There we go. So B was to declare the model. C was to create the model. So we created a circle object. I used different numbers that were here. And then, I'm going to do one more thing just so that we can see it initially. I'm going to just draw it. So down here where it says create the GUI components, in here, I'm going to go I'm going to go model.draw GC like that. And maybe we should also put the toString in the text label as well. So toString label dot set text. This code doesn't really belong here, but we'll move it in a second. We want to put the model here, right? We want to call the toString of the model. There's a couple of things you could do. You could call the toString directly, but I like to use this little trick where I get it to concatenate with the empty string, and that forces a call to the toString in order to convert it into a string. So let's see what it looks like now. There we go. There's our circle. It's a little bit, I like how it's just a little bit off the screen. And here's the toString down here. So we created this Circle4 object to be the model, and then we've just initially drawn it on the screen. Now, for step 3D, the suggestion here is it would be useful at this point to create a private helper method called refresh. So the job of this will be to update the view to match the model. Now, this isn't something that you necessarily have to have for every app, but it's handy in this case. Because we can call it at the beginning to display the circle, and then every time something about the circle changes, we can just call our refresh method and make it redraw itself. So essentially what that's going to do is all of this drawing code here. So we clear the screen with the set fill of light goldenrod and the fill rect, and then we tell the model to draw itself, and it obviously sets the color to black to do that, and then we change the toString label. So all of this here can be a method. Private, so we're going to call it refresh view. How about that? It needs a return type. It'll be void, and we'll just put that stuff in it. And then what we can do is final setup down here, refresh view, and that we shouldn't see much difference over here. But now we've taken those lines and put them in their own methods so that we can call them anytime. Okay, I think that's everything for step 3D. Means clear and draw the circle on the graphics context of the canvas, then update the label text using the toString method. When the method is written, call it under 5, add listeners, and do final setup. So we did that there. Okay. And then we're on step E. We're on the final step. So now update the event handler so that it reads the new radius. Oh, we never put an event handler. We never did do that. We're supposed to do that back in A here, but I forgot. So okay, so let's create the event handler. We need that. So do you remember how this goes? Private void, we'll call it change radius, and it has to take an action event parameter, which I will just call E, like that. And we're just going to hook up the plumbing here to make sure that it works. Under add event handlers here, we're going to add it to the set button. It's set on action. Change radius. Let's run it again. Just make sure that the plumbing is hooked up. The electrical wiring is hooked up to make sure that our method is going. There we go. It prints high there. Down here whenever I hit change radius. So what do I need to do now? I need to change it so that it reads this number, calls the set radius method on the model, and then calls refresh to redraw the model. And that will redraw it here and change the label down here. So up here, now radiuses can be doubles. It could be an integer, it could be a double, but I think I'm going to use double here. So double new radius equals, and we're going to use double.parseDouble, that little helper method that parses doubles for us, and it's going to be what's the name of it? Radius field dot get text. Boom. Okay, so this will throw an exception if we put bad values in there, but like I said before, we're just ignoring that. We're assuming that the user behaves themselves. So we've got our new radius. The model has a set radius method, like that. I think that's it, and then we refresh. Call refresh view, which clears the canvas, has the model draw itself, and then uses the toString label to put the model's toString into there. I think this will do it. So let's change the radius to 50. Hey, look at that. Pretty cool. So this is all, I mean, the actual drawing code and the management of the circle was stuff that we wrote before. Now, if you're thinking ahead to the assignment, I'm going to ask you to do something like this for the assignment. A lot of our previous assignments, 2, 3, and 4, I think, could be you could create a graphical user interface for them. And so this assignment's going to be quite open-ended, but the rule is going to be that you separate the model and the view. So just like before, the view talks to the user through button clicks and the user typing into text boxes. And the model is going to be the class or set of classes behind the scenes that you interact with in order to make things work. And it's always going to be a good idea, if you can do it, to have a single, even if you've got multiple classes, to have a single class that is the main one that you interact with. That's going to make things a little bit easier. Okay. I think we're done. Oh, if you feel like it, you could call request. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good little method. Is it in the appendix? Request focus? Yes, it is. It's it's in all of the objects. Every object, because you see how the arrows work. We'll talk about this next week. But this request focus method is in label, text field, button, canvas. So anytime you want. So the thing to, okay, so what is hang on, what is focus? Focus is, okay, when you start, this text box has focus. You can tell because of the blue outlining around it, and also when a text box in FX gains focus, it highlights the text that's in it. So when it first runs, you type stuff. When I hit change radius, now change radius has the focus. So focus is a concept that exists in every graphical user interface system. There's always one element that has the focus, and sometimes there's a visual indication of which element has the focus, but the element that has the focus is the one that's going to receive all the keystroke events. So if I start to type a new radius now, it doesn't go into the text box because the button has focus. So those key events are going into the button object, which is ignoring them because a button doesn't do anything with text with keystroke events. To get it to go back here, I have to either tab, shift tab goes back and forth, or just tab, or I have to click in it to give this thing the focus, and now it's listening to my keystroke events. So it's kind of annoying that every time I hit change radius, I have to click back in here or hit tab to change it again. The trick that would fix that is, after we do a refresh view, we go to the radius field and we say that, that we want it to request the focus. And what that does is it causes it to send a message to the rest of the system saying, can I please have the focus? And as long as, it might not work potentially, but as long as everything else is okay and the graphical user interface manager is okay with it, then it'll give focus back. So now when I hit change radius, see, I immediately have focus, which is kind of nice. So now I can just type numbers and like that. It's pretty neat. What would be extra neat is if I could just hit enter and I didn't have to use the button at all. But for that, we have to add a different kind of listener in here. I'll leave that as a project for you if you want to do it. You need a different kind of listener in there that you respond to that would then just do the same job, noticing that the enter key had been pressed. Okay, so this is your first kind of real GUI app in the sense that it's allowing the user to interact with something that has an independent existence in the background. So this is the view, and in the background we have the model that we're manipulating and showing. So it says here, congratulations, you just made your first two-class GUI app separating the view from the model. And then there's a couple of appendices here which I would like you to take a look at and read over. This is the class diagram for Circle Manager that we just created, what we called our circle view. But this is the view object. It is an object, so the main method does, even though you don't see a constructor being called, this window is an object, and this application is an object. We have a private, now I called them something different, so this matches the one that was pre-baked. Oh, these should be private. Forgot that. Everything should be private here. There we go. So yeah, we have a okay. So this is a slightly different setup here. We have a refresh view, which I guess is being called draw a circle here. We have a change radius, which is being called set rad handler here, which takes an action event. So these are its private methods. It has a public method start, which is always there, and it also has main, a public static method that gets things going. It's got a bunch of private instance variables which aren't shown here, but it has one of its instance variables is a link to the model. So this is an association relationship. Actually, technically, these are all association relationships, but the most important one that we worry about here is to the model. So Circle Manager is associated with the Circle 4 class, and this is the diagram for the Circle 4 class, and it serves as the model. So this is an association relationship between the two classes in our app. And finally, there's a little discussion here of event-driven programming, because that's what we're doing here. It's a different kind of programming. We don't have a main method that's always in control. The main method, as you've seen, is very short. All it does is call a single method that launches everything, and eventually at some point calls the start method. And when the start method is done, everything kind of settles down, and then we're just waiting for things to happen. So that's what's different about event-driven programming. You set up all the objects, you set things up and everything, and then you just wait for stuff to happen. And when something happens that you've registered a handler for, some more of your code will run. So the app is running in the background, but it's mostly not running our code. It's mostly running what's called event handler code. So the event handler is in a tight loop waiting for something to happen, and when something does happen, it may call one of our methods in response. So it's a little bit different, and there's a little gotcha here called hijacking the event handler. Maybe I can show you this just quickly. It's really important in a graphical interface that event handlers do the job that they're meant to do quickly and then get out. Okay? So change rate, so every method here, you shouldn't have big, huge loops. You shouldn't be doing huge amounts of work in here. If you do that, then you can end up in a situation like this. So this is just a little toy application, this hijack code, which is in the week 7 code. Yeah, so it's just, all it does is when I press the count button, it increases a counter and displays it in a label. All right, if I hit the hijack button, it's going to pause for 1,000 milliseconds inside the hijack method. So you can see here is, where is it? That's the count method. Oh, here's the pause method. So this is a listener for that other button. It's a set. It was added with set on action, and it's going to read the time field, and then it's going to call thread.sleep. So it's going to pause for a second, which is a long time. This app should finish and clear long before a second is up, really. But it's kind of simulating we've gone off to do some really labor-intensive process in the background. So when I hit hijack here and then try to hit count, it doesn't work at first because we're still in this method. So once we're in a listener method, we've kind of seized control. If I make this hijacked for 5,000 milliseconds, hijack, I'm trying to press the button and nothing's happening, and I can't even iconify it until eventually the hijack method returns. I can't even do this or this. Those events will only get processed after the hijack method is finished. So that's just an important thing to keep in mind, and it's kind of a quirk of event-driven programming. You guys don't have to worry about it too much, but if you were to want to do, for example, animations and stuff on the canvas, you wouldn't be able to just put the animation into your listener method, into your handler method. You would really have to actually spawn a separate thread of control to do that in. And you can look that up, or you can ask me if you want help with that. But suffice it to say that we've come to a certain point where we can display things on the canvas, but if you want to do animations or if you want to make a live game or whatever, it's going to require a different kind of architecture. You're not going to be able to, not radically different, but slightly different. You're not going to be able to just have a method that starts a game and plays the game unless that method is being started in a separate thread. And I can certainly help you with that if you want. Okay, let's talk exercises. So here it says a couple things you can do here. One is you could, if you've been working on the account manager, you could go, there's an account class here, which has, similar to what we've seen before. It has withdraw and deposit methods here. So you could change your account manager to use this as the model. So in the private instance variables, you create an account class, and you use that to display the balance. And when they hit deposit and withdraw, you pass that on to these methods here. So you respond by calling the deposit and withdraw methods, and then redisplaying. Maybe you use get balance to redisplay the balance on the app. Or if you like the circle manager, you can expand it. So it says here, expand on the circle manager view so the user can set the location. So you'll need two new fields here and a new button. And you can basically use the same model as set radius. You just have to call the appropriate methods and then refresh the view. And this one says, continue to expand circle manager, add a display for the area of the circle. So show the area of the circle somewhere. Make it update when the radius changes. Add a way to alter the color, the line width, and whether the circle is filled or unfilled. So for that, you're going to have to make some changes probably to the circle class itself, if you want to do that. And then there's some more exercises down here, which I encourage you to try. But we'll probably try one of them in the live help session as well. Probably maybe the characteristic tester, since we've already done the characteristic class, or something else. The assignment for this week is quite open-ended, but I'll make a short little video about that, and we can also talk about it in the live class. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in class.